Well, hello. Rick texted me earlier today to ask for a little bit of a tropical update of the system that's currently brewing in the Gulf. So I figured instead of sending a very long, confusing text message, I'd do what I normally do, which is create little forecasting videos for everyone to consume as they were. I couldn't give a response anyway right away. We were actually in Raleigh today for Drew Bass's daughter's first birthday party. Didn't get out of there until about 9. Had to drive all the way back. Didn't get here until about midnight. And then I've had to catch up on whatever the hurricane, or not hurricane, the tropical system has been doing since then, and get some studying done. So I think I'm all good right now. I'm going to dive right in to what we're looking at here. This is now Tropical Depression 10. I'm pretty sure that you can see my mouse. Tropical Depression 10. Assuming it does become a tropical storm, its name will be Idalia, starting with an I. It'll obviously be the 10th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. Currently, what we're looking at structurally, it has a well-defined convective rain banding that's going on all around its center, which is currently about 30 miles east of the Yucatan Peninsula, about 30 miles directly east of Cancun. The center is clearly defined. It's not being impacted. It's not impacting land, and it's spinning over open ocean. And what's a little bit concerning about this particular system is that it's a little bit ahead of schedule. Original modeling that came out about 2 days ago actually had this system being torn apart in a lot of different ways, and unfortunately, it has actually proven a lot of those models wrong. It has organized itself to actually have a fully convective center, which is what is required in order for a tropical wave to be deemed a depression. It has to have winds going in all 360 degrees around a concise center. We see a little bit of shear present in the northeast and the southwest, which is typical for a building tropical system. And we actually are seeing that it's in a little bit of a waning phase right now. Actually, you can kind of see new thunderstorms sparking up, so it's completed its typical daily waning phase, which happens actually during the day for developing hurricanes. They develop the thunderstorms that shoot up into the atmosphere. They develop more at night, and then during the day they wane a little bit, and you get to see a little bit more of the exposed center. So it's doing what it normally should be doing in terms of further development. So moving on, so that's generally what it looks like right now from shortwave infrared. We can go on to the water vapor. Now, and when we're looking at water vapor like this for a tropical system, hurricanes generally speaking need three things in order for them to build. They need minimal wind shear, so no winds crisscrossing in different directions and whatnot across a full synoptic region. They need warm ocean waters, and they need a moist atmosphere, not dry air. So that's why earlier in the season in the summer we had the Saharan dust layer that was completely inhibiting all of the potential for hurricanes because it had made the air so dry. That is not the case here in the Gulf at the moment. We see these really deep blues and purples. That signifies moisture throughout the course of the entire atmospheric column. So moisture is not an issue. We'll get to this. Actually, we can talk about this now. So what is dry air in this particular model is green denotes moisture that's only in the upper levels. So that means conversely, lower levels are dry, and then black just means dry through the whole column. And that is not good for any kind of hurricane formation in that sense. But we see that the convection itself is well found out in all directions. That shows that shear isn't an issue for this at the moment. But in terms of directional and in terms of whether this is going to get better or get more intense in the next 24 to 48 hours, seeing that this is actually northerly flow, so it's wind that's coming directly from the continent into the Gulf of Mexico and down, and it's black and green, shows that dry air is going to be making its way into the path of this system, and it's actually going to impede it a little bit, keeping it down in next to the Yucatan and off the coast of Cuba for at least the next 48 hours. We can move on to some of the modeling that we have currently. Go back to what we currently have focused. Now, the only model that was actually somewhat good in making sure this system at least generated into a forecast was the European model. It's normal. The American models typically are not as accurate or not as well performing in tropical conditions. That's the GFS, the ECNWF, or the Euro has been doing a better job. And thus, I'm really only going to focus on it because you don't want to focus on a model that hasn't been performing, obviously, in the recent past. So we're going to focus on the Euro here. We're looking at 850 millibar heights and winds along the mean sea level pressure centers. So that it just pretty much shows where this currently is going to, or where it's going to sit. So we're going to go through the day here. This is about 24 hours ahead from right now, moving into 2 days from now, and you can see there's no real. It's not going anywhere. That's because of this northerly flow that would be coming off of the continent, like I was talking about before, keeping this pretty tamped down into the South Gulf for quite a while here. It'll keep Idalia generally in place. It'll oppose steering flow, which means it's not going to generally go anywhere. You might actually see, I believe you can see it here for a little bit. You can see that it might actually do a little bit of a concentric loop. Do it like this, like literally go in a circle for at least a day or two. The main thing that will be interesting there is whether or not the center itself goes over the Yucatan and technically makes a landfall or not. If it interacts with land in that sense, where the center is directly over it, it's going to diminish it. It might even shear it completely away. That's a little bit unlikely as of right now, but it's still possible. Let's see what else is on my list. So yeah, so it's going to sit on the coast of the Yucatan. More than likely, it's going to keep staying away from the coast as it is. We can look at some of the relative humidity, so you can see here the kind of that dry air I was talking about. You see the green represents high moisture content. The browns sees dry air. What's going to be interesting here is you can see that some of this dry air, specifically, this is 9Z Monday, so middle of the night Monday, you can see a lot of this dry air is actually coming down, getting into the Yucatan Peninsula, so getting over dry continental landmass, and actually making its way and injecting itself into the low center itself. So you can see a lot of that moisture is kind of cutting the system in half a little bit. That is something, it's a way for maybe the system could maybe diminish in intensity or not intensify much at all over the next couple of days. That is a pretty optimistic thing that I'm predicting out, or the Euro is predicting over right now. You can see some possible land interaction sites like I was talking about right there. But once again, the Euro is just one model run, and these global models, they run twice. They run twice a day, once every 12 hours, and then they have like a median run in those 6-hour time frames in between. So each time that this runs, it's going to have a different outcome. In another 6 hours, it could have something completely different. This is just one model run. So in this one, it's actually pretty good. Unfortunately, if you were to go on to the HAFS model, which is what the National Hurricane Center currently uses, this is a hurricane convective model, which means essentially if the American model, the GFS, is struggling to identify where a cyclone center is, like predicting where it is, obviously it's not going to be able to predict where that hurricane or what that cyclone is going to go, because it doesn't even think that's there. So what the HAFS model does is essentially we're giving the GFS a hint. We're saying, hey, there's a hurricane there, or there's a cyclone center there in general. What would the model look like if we put a hurricane there? And where would that hurricane go, and how would it intensify from there? So it's kind of giving it a little bit more of a hint as to where observations currently are. And this one's a little bit more concerning. So you see that dry air, it says more, the center stays more way off to the east, and therefore it doesn't have as much dry air interaction. Actually interacts with kind of the coastline of Cuba there for a little bit, but that shouldn't actually hinder it too much. You can see that the system center is sheared in half still, but it's actually going to deepen as we get out into, and it starts to get that launching point out into the northern Gulf in about after the next 2 days or so. And this is where it gets kind of dangerous, because once you get down into such 968 territory, HAFS has it currently at about a Category 3 hurricane at landfall as it makes its way into the Big Bend region of Florida. Not a particularly good thing, and not a particularly good track for Palm Coast, because we always want to keep you guys on the right side, or we want to keep it on the left side of the storm center. In this particular scenario, that would not be the case for this particular model run. This is what we call more like a ceiling run, which is like it's predicting the worst case scenario intensity wise. It's actually weakened. It used to be a lot stronger this morning. The last time I checked it, this got down to 932, which would be cataclysmic. Not probably going to happen. It'll probably continue to weaken in its intensity. Modeling over the next couple of days as we get more information. But it just goes to show that every model is different. You got to take all this into account when you're making a forecast. Taking a little bit of a look at the streaming motion. I know I'm running low on time here, so I'll keep going. I only have 15 minutes to record these videos if I don't want to pay anything. So this is the steering flow. We see an upper level low that's currently spinning anticyclonically around in the Bermuda region, which is currently influencing Hurricane Franklin. And then we see some troughing that's going to be extending down from the southeastern U.S. That's going to be anticyclonic rotation, or cyclonic rotation, I should say, that will ultimately work to pull Idalia from the Yucatan all the way up and into the Florida coast. Now, the main thing that's of a little bit of concern is we don't really know where. We know for a fact it's not going to be anywhere in like the Louisiana, Texas region because of that trough that I was referring to, all that dry air. But we don't have enough data as of right now at 1:42 a.m. on Sunday morning, where from pretty much Mobile, Alabama, all the way down into Tampa it's going to end up being. And timelines as well are going to be a little bit all over the place as well. I know I had that pulled up here. I can probably pull it up again. It's just the cone. Yeah. So timing here is good. This is the current National Weather Service forecast. Obviously, get all your information from only the National Hurricane Center. Don't solely rely on your local TV forecaster. 9 times out of 10, they really don't know what they're talking about, and they change forecasts for no adequately explored reason. These are the PhD doctorates. These are the people that know what they're doing. In terms of timing wise, once again, this is the cone of uncertainty. Wherever the storm center could be anywhere, that doesn't mean the wind field is this. This is only the storm center. So the wind field is obviously going to be much more right leaning. So just keep that in mind. But it's generally wherever this launches up into the Gulf of Mexico is going to largely determine where it goes. Obviously, we won't know that for the next couple of days or until the hurricane hunters start going into this every 6 hours to get drop zone data so that we can see it and kind of predict this a little bit better. But you can see it does its little loop, stays here in the general North Gulf region, and the jettison point is about late Monday night into Tuesday. If it goes and does this more easterly track, let's say it goes more of a Tampa direction, then it's going to be getting there a little bit earlier. It won't have as much time to intensify either. And that would be best case scenario for you because you'd be on the left side of the storm. So you're kind of hoping that it leans a little bit. Everyone hopes that it's leaning a little bit more to the right, except for maybe the Fort Myers region, obviously. But then if it decides to go into the left left more into Big Bend, maybe Apalachicola, PCB, that kind of thing, it's going to have more time to intensify, and it's going to take longer to get there. Probably looking at like a Wednesday morning landfall as opposed to a Tuesday morning if it were to go to Tampa. So that's pretty much what we're looking at there. There's obviously a lot more I could get into, but generally speaking, the main thing to take away is it's not going to impact Labor Day. This will be well and gone by probably Thursday night at the latest. So you guys will be pretty much free and clear. It'll just be regular Florida convective afternoon thunderstorm sea breeze stuff for the majority of the weekend. But if you have any other questions, I can always make more videos of this. I'm pretty used to it by now, so just send me out any questions you might have, and I'll be happy to answer them. And that's pretty much it. Hope to talk to you all soon. Have a good night.